this event. Thank you all so much for being here. This means so much. We have a very special announcement before we kick off with the first keynote session. So I'd like to welcome on stage the International President of NEWH.
Good morning. How's everybody feeling? Having fun? Great. So NEWH is a nonprofit organization, and we award scholarships to interior design students, culinary arts, and hospitality management. We are so delighted that Toby has partnered with our organization and generously donated for a scholarship we're going to present today. To learn a little bit more about our organization, we're going to show a quick video. Video, go. I checked with them before too. We're good. I could sing again. It would be painful for all of you, I trust. There we go. Enjoy.
My name is Ajay Oliver, and I received the NEWH scholarship. So I grew up in the beautiful islands of the Bahamas. My mom worked as a police officer and raised my sister and I as a single mom.
My name is Mark Sparrow, and I won the NEWH scholarship in 2004. My parents gave up everything they really had in South Africa to move the family to Canada. I knew that for me going to university, I was going to need to fund my own way through it.
When I was 8, unfortunately, my mom passed away.
My mom was kind of our everything. Sorry.
My sister took 3 jobs to support us. We had to grow up quickly. When I was in the 10th grade, my guidance counselor told me the only way for me to secure a future is to get a scholarship.
When I received a scholarship from NEWH, it was $1,500, and at that time, that was a significant amount for me. Today, I am the Executive Vice President for JLL Hotels in Canada. We've sold about 57 hotels, representing $2.4 billion. What this scholarship meant to me, it's truly incredible.
When I found that I got the scholarship, I kind of fell back.
We're both crying because we know how far we came.
Thank you.
It's how these scholarships change lives. It's why we do what we do.
I think behind every scholarship, there are so many stories.
I decided to pursue hospitality management because I like to make people smile.
He has my mom's smile. You see how they got those creases, those really big dents, big fat cheeks.
When I smile, I absolutely know that my mom is smiling down on me. Thank you, NEWH. Thank you.
It is because of the generosity of our partners that we're able to award these scholarships and touch lives. Elite Exhibitions has been generous enough to donate a $5,000 scholarship, and I'd like to introduce our recipient student, Brennan Brum.
Well, I'd first like to thank Elite Exhibitions for offering me this scholarship, putting on this expo. I'm excited to see what it has to offer. I'm excited to have it in my hometown of Miami as well. I'd also like to thank NEWH for their continued generosity throughout my education. I just finished my master's in interior architecture here in Miami, which ultimately ended 7 years of school, so I know the value of scholarships like this. So again, I'd like to just thank them both, and thank you all for being here today.
Brennan. And Toby for, again, the generosity of your organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the expo. I almost forgot. Terrible of me. Elizabeth. I was so fixated on making sure I got your name right. The fabulous Elizabeth Casal
Thank
will
you.
take it away for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Design Trends 2020 session with our wonderful panelists here. So today we're going to focus on what drives the trends in the cruise industry, how we take land-based design and kind of introduce it with little bits and pieces. So just to get started, we have here to my left Javier Calle. He's a co-founder of Studio DADO, that they're a design firm here in Miami. We have Andy Yuill from SMC, also with 25 years of experience. David McCarthy, who has just won an AHEAD Awards for his work on the Crystal Symphony. He is with
25 years experience in
20
the
years.
industry. Go for it.
And Helena Sawelin with Tillberg Design of Sweden, also joining us today. I'm sorry, I'm very nervous, but we'll get into this and we'll make it happen.
We'll help you through. Don't worry.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we got started. As I freeze. Too many pages.
Keep on going.
Okay, so Javier, we'll start with you. You'll take this one, and then we'll just give little points here and there. So how is land-based design, how has it influenced the cruise line industry?
Am I on? Okay, so my thoughts on that are that traditionally, the cruise ship industry, as it's been known, is kind of like a stereotype. It has always been based on very strongly themed spaces, almost to a fault, because it meant that spaces became outdated really quickly. So I think one of the things that we've taken from landside design and architectural design is to start creating spaces that are a bit more sophisticated, more timeless, not so heavily themed, but more based on a more important and larger idea driving the design. Something that has more meaning, not so much a theme, which is almost Vegas-like. So I think it's become a little bit more sophisticated by nature now, and we've seen it in the last 10 years. It's almost even, I've started to notice that even landside design has been influenced by what we're doing in cruise ships. So it's been a big leap forward.
No? Anyone else wants to put in?
I believe that there is no difference. I believe that the design that occurs landside, occurs on cruise ships, is designed by the same designers who live in the same world, who are influenced by the same elements, and we design in a similar way. So I always feel quite strongly when we get this question about landside against cruise. It's our responsibility to make sure that the design is as good as possible, and it should never be looked to be compartmentalized into one box.
Yeah.
So
I tend to agree with Andy, and I think that cruise line executives have also started to really understand that they're not just competing with one another within the cruise sector, but the actual wider global hospitality, leisure, resort, holiday destinations that they're looking to attract. And so, yeah, there should be no distinction. There has been, absolutely.
Right.
But I think, in testimony to a recent award, we're breaking down those barriers. So, but it's great that cruise line execs are actually starting to recognize that.
Very
No, but, I mean, it's everything has been said, so it's correct. The cruise industry doesn't look on each other for innovation, so they look, of course, on the land side, what's happening, and the big resorts, and find the coolest places, what's happening, and that is what is coming more and more in the cruise industry as well, of course.
Yeah. Exceed expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. And how do we ensure that the client branding stays on point when we're designing all of these spaces?
I think each of the brands today, they do a huge amount of CRM, they do a huge amount of insights into their guests, their customers, what they're looking for. Obviously nowadays using tremendous technology to gather data about their footfall, their sort of likes and wants, etc. And clearly that's shaping how the brands want to go forward. And then I think for us as designers, we've then got to understand the brand, their values, what they want to do going forward, and add value to that. Move forward with them as well, come up with some fresh ideas and fresh thinking, and exciting when you see the finished article.
I think the branding for the different cruises is even more important now. They really have to find their own type of style, each cruise owner, so to say, to make it easier for the passenger to find what cruise they are interested to go in. So we are happy to be helping out and make, as a design partner to the cruise owner, to make a stronger brand for themselves. And I think that is very important for them to be a stronger brand.
The other thing is that I think the brands also evolve as their guests, the generations move on. So we have to keep track of that, of the brand's evolution. You can't stay still, so you have to sort of make sure that you still are designing to that brand, but understand that the brand's evolving as a new generation is becoming their new sort of base.
Yes.
I think there's always been brand. Everything has always had a brand attached to it. What we have nowadays is we have the development and improvement of existing brands, but then we have the wonderful opportunity to create brands. We have the wonderful opportunity to create prototypes for the new clients, for clients who are entering the market and do not have existing vessels. And there the creation of brand is even more exciting because there is nothing perhaps at the beginning, and we have to create everything. And that's the most wonderful opportunity.
Very right. And meaningful spaces.
Right.
How do we achieve these?
Meaningful space.
Yes, meaningful spaces. How do we create a space that
for me,
once the guests come in, they're like, wow.
It's about all the senses that you have and you possess and that you want people to experience. Depending on what type of space it is, of course, whether it be a bar, a specialty dining area, or a spa, etc. Everything all has to come together in terms of the materials that you use, but also the senses, so perhaps the smells, and also the music, etc. And I think as people are drawn to a space, they want to feel that any of the touch points are just very frictionless. It's smooth, and they can just sense that the space is something that they can feel relaxed or enjoy, whatever the occasion happens to be.
Yeah.
I think I was trying to find ways to connect the end user, the guests, at an emotional level. So we always try to find meaning behind there's a meaning for everything that we put in our design that sort of creates an emotional connection for the person who's there, so that they feel. And we have a very powerful sort of tool, which is design, and we can make people feel things when you're inside a space. So we try to use that and get the end user engaged. And sometimes they don't understand why they enjoy being somewhere in a space, but it's those little bits and details that you sprinkle throughout that space that make it a full experience.
I think also we have to reevaluate the luxury, the meaning of luxury. I don't think the passenger thinks champagne is the most luxury anymore. We also have to look at the destination the cruise is going at, and to maybe have a more cruise that has more, education on board, something else that is more meaning. I think to find another way to look at the meaningful spaces, where they go with the trips also is very important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed, we've been bombarded by so much technology in the last 20 years that I think people are looking for authenticity or a sense of belonging or something that's a little bit more socially responsible. So those are things that we always try to keep in mind when we're designing.
Sustainability is a big item.
Right, yeah.
I think as designers, when you talk about meaningful spaces, we have to stop thinking there is a blueprint, there's a way to do something. Yes, there are facilities and offerings that are required, but we should be challenging how these are perceived and how they are received. A great example is on board a ship that people still think there is a lobby, there is a reception, but that space almost even shouldn't be referred to that. It should have other uses, it should have other items that bring together. You actually want your guests, your passengers to think, I didn't expect that, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And that's where we've got to keep challenging how space is used and not just to think there's a cookie cutter of laying something out.
Coming back to a point that Helena made about the perception of luxury perhaps is that, there's luxury commodities, of course, but I think for more of us nowadays, luxury is about that luxury of having time, being able to actually just disconnect from the technology that Javier is referring to, and if we can help, create environments in which you can do that, then I think we're doing a great job.
And I think also today you want to choose where to work actually. So to have on the vacation, maybe someone wants to have the computer to work a few hours a day and still have the vacation close to you. And so Wi-Fi, of course, is very important when it comes to technology. So that could be also meaningful spaces to find aboard a hidden area, hidden space.
Very good. You want them to explore and find new things, right?
Yes, very important.
Very good. So, in terms of being creative with biolithic design, right? I think this is a big item that we're seeing with everything from materials to how would you introduce this type of items into a design, into a space, one of these?
Biolithic design as a term is about bringing natural elements into architecture.
Of course.
And I thought about that, and I thought you could sit and talk about what could be taking place in or on board a vessel. But perhaps biolithic design should be something which is expanded upon more. The biolithic design is actually the passenger's ability to get close to nature, to go to places. Because of the current trend for smaller vessels, you can go to places larger vessels can't do.
Yeah.
You can actually experience nature. You can get up close and personal. To me, I was thinking, is that even an extension of biolithic design? Because it's all about passengers taking ownership of the natural world. So that was my thought on that.
Or maybe, I don't know if that is what you're meaning. I think the new generation is more interested in the local culture they are coming to, actually, the destination. And to be more part of that and learn, I think that is more important.
Any thoughts on that?
I think we're all, citizens of the world, and the more that we can expose our people who to destinations they may have not thought of going, it makes us makes us more educated and more aware of what's going on around us, and both at home and far away. Going back to biolithic design, for us it's always a challenge because we have a lot of parameters that we have to work within when we're designing for cruise ships.
Yes.
But we try to work those elements in through the use of materials, imagery. Again, working within the parameters that we have to. It's always a challenge, but try to bring some awareness to people through maybe it's education in some of the venues, maybe it's some information that may make them aware of things that are happening that otherwise they may not have been.
I mean,
Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
so if biolithic design can extend from the use of materials, the technical aspects, it should extend to what the offering is, the fact that there's the reduction in simple things like plastic, which we're so made aware of at the moment. And for collectively in the world, if all hospitality were to stop using plastics and things like that, it's got to be seen as a positive move forward. So
this is the point I was going to add, actually, and about sustainability. We had a great presentation yesterday. There's another one today. Thanks, Wilton, giving a great presentation, and it's exactly right. Is that those considerations that perhaps just go wider, and I think to Javier's point about being a citizen of the world as well, people are becoming absolutely far more conscious about sustainability and about caring for the environment, etc. If we can weave those moments into spaces as well, that people feel connected, then that's good.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to timeless design, which I think is something that you pointed out in the first question. How do we achieve this? How do we make sure that our designs are timeless when we're designing 4 years in advance, really, sometimes? So.
Yeah, that's the challenge that we have. We have to almost like feature cast. But, I think, being kind of specific, I know through the use of neutrality, neutral colors, injecting color very strategically, avoid strong theming, but again, our designs have to have a deeper meaning. I think that's sort of a good recipe. Nothing's 100%.
No. We have
interesting details some here and where that lifts the design maybe is enough many times.
We want to have them keep coming back, right?
Yeah. I think for a lot of clients that we work for, it almost falls into two camps. You'd still have those that prefer to see out-and-out design, very design-led spaces, but others that still actually are looking for those much more experiential and almost branded space. So bearing that in mind, there are still ways in which the design, through careful choice of materials, perhaps artwork selection, and various other branding elements that you might, if that's still required for a space that you bring in, is easily changeable. So something later on, a revitalization, refit, etc., is something that actually could be changed out quite easily. So there's still those considerations, I think, to give.
I think timeless design, it's a bit like music, which still appears to be current. It's a bit like fashion, which still appears to be current, which still holds something. It's design stuff that was designed 20 years ago, and it still has a reason. It can still be received and as well away as it was when it was launched. The fact that it was more colourful, the fact it was more bright, it represented a time and a place. It represented an owner as well. That particular owner wanted something done in a particular way. We as designers, we work for the owners, we work for clients, we have to listen to them. And so the design that was produced, to me, can still feel timeless, even though it's not something which appears to be contemporary, modern, it could be classical, it could be traditional, but it represents that time and a place in our industry where you can still walk into and think, yes, this still works, it still functions.
Enduring. You want the design to feel that it's going to be enduring, I think.
And beautiful.
Of course, of course.
And have the expectations of cruise ship guests evolved from what they were a decade ago?
Well, I think, going back to the point I made at the beginning, I think people are looking for more meaningful experiences. The trend for the cruise ship industry a long time ago, it almost used to be like a floating Las Vegas, So I know I've seen the trend. I've seen it evolve, and I think now it's become we have the guests are a lot more informed. High design is now available to many demographics. Look what Target has done, bringing in partnerships and making good design available to people at the entry level. And I think it's sort of the same thing. High design doesn't have to come not only to the premium brands, but also the commodity brands. So, I think people are a lot more aware. Social media, television. There's design shows everywhere, and people like in the middle of Mississippi are aware of what's going on. They had. I would say 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. So now we have to design for everyone, and people are it's definitely an evolution.
Yes.
I think that's a very important statement, that we have to design for everyone. Yes, everything evolves over decades, but people have evolved. The people who go on cruises have evolved. So the opportunity, the different types of design to fit these different demographics has evolved, and that's what gives the owners, that's what gives the designers the opportunity to cater for these different markets. Perhaps 20 years ago it was looked as a one-size-fits-all type thing, whereas now it's a far more larger array of clothes of different size, fittings and style to fit a far more colourful and varied passenger demographic.
Yes.
And that's what continues to make it exciting and interesting from a design point of view.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
From my perspective, I mean, it's mid-90s, if I can remember that way back. I ran away to sea. I actually worked on board cruise ships for 14 years, and during that time, didn't work on a lot of Vegas-style ships. More holiday camp, perhaps. But to the point, exactly, trends or rather, the acceptance or the accessibility to design or the appreciation of design. I think culturally things have changed over the years. There is, of course, all the work that social media does in making that happen as well. But people have just become, I think, accustomed to feeling that design is more accessible and something that can be understood also. Perhaps that all goes back to a bit of that more cerebral, thinking about, feeling that this is a comfortable space. I like being here, and it's been designed well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Well, I agree. I think it is correct what you said, all guys. I think it's also important to maybe it's also with the new generation, and as we said, we have to design so many different ways today, and there should be spaces for exploring cruises, and I don't think the new passengers will do any environmental footprints on land either. So the cruise industry will look a little bit different in the future, I guess, actually, and we have to remember that, how we should meet the new client in the best way.
And how do we sell this to our clients, really? How do we break the barriers of we're used to doing things this way, and now we're moving towards another?
You tell us.
I know. Well,
But that's
sell it to me.
But that's the unexpected. You want people to be surprised. You want them something to be different. Yes, they've got an understanding, but you want them to think, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And then they'll think that the company they're cruising with, that they're offering more, and it's not just going back to the same formulas. So it's so important that we keep challenging formulas. I mean, I get quite annoyed sometimes when you get the comments about cruise industry, which I think are completely unfounded. The challenges that were set due to the huge variety of areas that we have to get involved with, it's incredible.
Yep.
You want to compare that to land-based work, where you have companies who specialize in this and specialize in that. We as designers have to turn our hand to a multitude of design challenges.
Do a little bit of everything.
Which is wonderful. And I think that perhaps land-based should look to what we do and think, wow, look at that variety.
Absolutely.
But I think they are doing that.
Yeah,
think so.
we have to remember today people is traveling a lot, not only cruising. I mean, they are traveling a lot to different countries, they see different cultures. So the expectations is very high today to meet and make the cruise industry even more interesting, so they choose to cruise again, or even more, so to say. I think that is our challenge.
I mean, the question of evolving is perhaps vessels 20 years ago, they were perhaps more revolutionary than we thought they were, because they were perhaps the first of a certain type. And we refer to things looking like Las Vegas. But if that was what the clients required at that time, then it was successful.
Right.
And the designs were successful. It was nothing to be ashamed of in any way.
Yeah. But that's what guests were looking for. They were looking for a different experience, something
There
that
was
they've never seen before,
There
right?
was escapism.
Yeah.
Escaping was a huge part of it. And whether that was seen across the different varieties those years ago. And everything is just evolving, as it does anywhere.
Yeah.
As it does. Definitely right. So, you want to ask some questions?
Silence.
We have a microphone, please.
I think Petra's hand
It's
went
coming.
straight up.
Good to put it down.
Right here. Full house.
Sorry, Petra, I'll take the first one.
Oh, that's a gentleman for you.
Thank you for a great panel. Been taking notes. You mentioned before that everyone pretty much has the same access to information with social media. And my question to you is, how do you ensure you stay relevant, authentic, and not ending up looking like everyone else?
Stay true to your values, I think. It's we don't want naturally to be a cookie cutter, and follow everybody else. So we particularly want to forge our own path, be true to our values that we hold dear. And I think when I talk about that, that's in particular when we're working with our clients, is being seen to be guardians of their brand as well when we're working closely with them. And we don't do that or take that lightly. We take pride in that. And that's something that we're certainly going to be sticking with.
Great. And that's when the client's briefs become pretty important for you guys as well, right?
Sorry?
The client's brief.
The brief's incredibly important because that's your starting point. That's where you will get an insight to what the client is looking for. And so, yes, it's incredibly important. We listen, we understand, but then we move forward from there. Then the client looks to us to say, well, what is our design direction? What do you think the design direction should be? It perhaps relates to a question that you didn't ask that was on the list about how do you maintain the design through the process so it doesn't break. And it's about building something. So by the end of the process, from the brief to the end of the conceptual period, you've built something which isn't broken. You've built something which is a common understanding. You've built something that has been shared, has been built with the client. It's not about working in isolation and then presenting something. It's about working together. It's about having shared understanding.
You get to know your client very well. You have to work very tight, and that is the most, I would say that is the key of success, when you can work really close to the decision maker and the owner, and have a clear brief and an understanding what the vision they are looking for, and we can be the design partner for them. Then you have this. Then they're the bestest.
Yeah, it is partnership for sure.
Yeah, it's very important.
So yeah, you got to work hand in hand throughout the whole process to make sure that you're always following the right path.
And never rest on your laurels. In our industry, you're only as good as your last presentation. You're always fighting. You're always trying to improve. You're always trying to be current. You're always trying to employ the right people. You're always trying to make sure that your design teams are as current as possible. So it's a continual challenge.
And dare to be proactive a little bit in all the presentations. And even if you have got a brief, sometimes dare to do challenge a little bit extra and surprise them.
Yes.
The other thing, as far as staying relevant.
Sorry, Javier.
As far as staying relevant, our team, our office culture has been to always question each other, no matter who in our team whether it's a partner, whether it's someone at the junior level, where it's an open forum to question each other, make sure that we're pushing, and like you said, not rest on our laurels. So you have to constantly be asking yourself the question: Are we doing enough? Is this the right thing? Are we following the right path? So definitely.
David?
I was going to add to both Javier and Andy's point. Attracting great talent into our business is really, really important. And once we're there, giving them the ownership, the support, but also that right engagement, so they feel that they're really have a great franchise in what they're doing, and celebrate the end results as well.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
I'm interested how you guys think design provokes the right emotion that suits the room that you're in. I know that when I walk into a restaurant, I feel hungry when perhaps I wasn't, or I walk into a library and I feel thoughtful maybe when perhaps I wasn't, or I walk into a spa and I feel relaxed when maybe I wasn't. How does design contribute to provoking the right emotion?
Very good question.
I think design's the first thing it's about first setting the mood, and from then on everything just starts to happen. But I think first impressions are important, and we as designers we are sort of we can manipulate the way you feel in space. So yeah, definitely we try to put ourselves in the place of the end user and see how you're gonna feel when you walk into the space, and what emotions it's gonna convey. So whether it's like you said, if it's a restaurant, are you gonna enjoy eating there? If you're not hungry, you're gonna be hungry when you walk. Maybe through the use of materials or even just how you circulate and navigate through a space. All those things just kind of stay together to create that overall experience.
I know there have been some studies about spaces where you feel really comfortable, and there is not only the good food, it is also the layout, of course, and the smell and the music, and all that is maybe more a technical, invisible technical detail actually. And I think we have to just catch that point a little bit.
I think to Helena's point, the added elements, and mentioned it earlier about could be lighting
Exactly.
to set a certain mood. It's certainly if there's background music, that sort of thing. You know what? I think the one element that we're perhaps forgetting as well is that we can provide the hardware, that great environment, you know, and but what's so incredibly important is the crew and the staff on board the ships.
Definitely.
And you know, we want to provide an environment at least that they can operate efficiently and effectively and deliver fantastic service to their guests. And I think it's, you know, at the end of the day, that human interaction is one that we might provide the scenery, if you like, but
It's
you know,
the cherry on top.
those guys have the, you know, have an important part to play.
I think that you can actually expand upon your question, that you're relating this to one space. One of the very important things is that you have the ability to combine and knit all of the areas together, which creates an overall product, which creates the overall vessel, which creates an overall feeling, atmosphere, etc. So it can go further than just the one area. You have to move through a space. You have to feel that it's linked together. It goes back to the whole question of brand as well, to create the entirety.
Going back to the working with the client and the briefs and how you kind of get the brief and start from that. Back a long time ago when you guys started, there was no renderings and stuff like that, which nowadays is almost too good even, and they get hung up then. How do you see that process of working with the owner, how it is today and how it was, let's say, 25 years ago?
I think back in the good old days, before CGI, before the technological developments, we would sometimes do a presentation of 40 visuals to a client, and the chances were you were going to get 30-40% disliked, and you would have to do again. And that was so obvious even then that you had to consult more with the client, talk more to the client, develop something more, to the introduction of doing design direction. So before you even put pen to paper, there is a visual understanding of where the design may go. There's a written understanding of where the design may go. There's a written understanding of what shall be required, how the area will work. And then, you know, SMC, we still quite passionate about sketching. I still like to show someone sketches. I still think that clients think that designers should be able to draw, because theoretically we're supposed to be artistic. So the ability to throw sketches in front of someone, quick three-dimensional sketches just showing 10 different ideas perhaps, but very quick, but you're building it up with the client. So before I even get to doing the wonderful CGI imagery and animation, etc., etc. There's been a journey where the design has been built up by the collective.
I agree.
I'm banned from picking up a pen in the studio. That's certainly not my forte. But moving forward, the continued use of new technologies of VR or AR, etc., actually does play its part in ensuring that sponsors and stakeholders within the client's group, the brands themselves, are confident that the design is heading in the direction that they want, and we're using that very effectively. I think to the point that when you have very realistic renderings, you want to ensure that that's what ends up being the end product as well. So that route through, and to Andy's point, you've already done your conceptual design, you've had that sign off, that buy-in, and then you're that guardian all the way through to the actual design being realized on board the ship.
And I think there's actually there's a bigger point as well, that in the good old days, you would have, here's a visual, whereas now it's the combination of the design, of the artwork, of the signage, of the uniforms, of the brand items that will go into the space. So the presentation is far more extensive. The owners, your clients, have to really believe in it. They have to see that it is the big picture of the area. And it's made the job for us far more interesting, exciting, fun, because there's an entirety to it.
Storytelling more.
Yes.
Yeah, storytelling design.
That's a good point.
Going back to the meaningful spaces again, right now new generations are thirsty for new experiences, and now we're dealing with influencers and social media a lot. How do you think that designers should filter all this information that the influencers are exposing on daily basis, and how do you think that's relevant for us designers in the future in 2022?
Well, there's a lot of information out there. So our job as designers, I think, is to distill that information into something meaningful, and not fall for the trap that try to distinguish what's a fad or a quick passing trend versus what's more lasting. So our job as designers, going back to Anne's point, we have to work within a bigger world right now. With social media, and then there's our scope has expanded into branding and creating a full experience. But that's always a challenge. With all the information that's out there, and to try to distill that information into something that's really gonna create a clear design directions for us is something that we're constantly struggling with, but we're making headway.
Perhaps people are far more aware when you refer to the whole social media side. So people are far more aware of more extensive thoughts and images, etc. We have to filter these things. Yeah. We have to think what is relevant, what is correct.
Yeah, I think to the guys' both points, that there's such a vast array out there, and I think there's a clue in the title. People talk about that Instagrammable moment, but it's Insta. It's
right.
It could be repeated, obviously, many times, but you need to distill those things down. And I think absolutely, to Javier's point, that you still remain true to something that you're designing is meaningful.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Hi. There's a sense among some people in the cruise industry that as the ships have gotten bigger and bigger, that this has had the effect of isolating the guests from the ocean and a nautical experience, which is maybe what they wanted to experience when they bought a cruise to begin with. So I'm wondering whether there's anything that design can do, or any examples that you might think of where design has reinforced the nautical experience, or reminded people in a cool way that they're on a cruise and not on a land resort, and just how that plays into your thoughts about designing for cruise ships.
Well, there is choice now. There are far more smaller vessels being built, and that gives the passenger the choice. Some people may wish to cruise on the very large vessels. Some people want the choice to cruise on something far smaller that gets them more intimate to the natural world, whether it's exploration vessels or just smaller vessels that have the ability to go where others can't. There is more choice now than there has ever been within the cruise industry. And so I agree with you about the size of these vessels, but the choice is there, and I think that will continue to expand.
In terms of bringing the ocean perhaps closer to the guest as well, there's a number of ships that are bringing designs in where a number of their outlets are split between open deck areas and interior spaces as you might move through a space, and also with cabin balconies, the way in which a number now are opening up, so it's much more expansive in terms of the opening that you might have to the outside, from your cabin, rather than just a very small sliding balcony door now. There's a number that really do open up, and you can really feel that you're connecting with the ocean.
Very good. Anyone else?
Okay.
No? Well, thank you everybody for coming, and thank you to our,
Yes, I got two quick questions. If you were going to design a ship for 2022, when you get the first idea in your mind till the ship makes her inaugural or her trials, what is the period of time, roughly?
The period of time from initial conception to completion.
Correct.
For a new vessel, for a prototype, perhaps around 4 years.
4 years about?
For a prototype.
For a ship like the Monster of the Seas or something like that, 6,000, 7,000 passengers?
I know that those vessels, for the prototype of them, they will have perhaps spent a year prior to the signing of a contract of them conceptualizing, understanding, knowing what it is they're going to build. So the very large ships, they may spend 5 years from initial thoughts to final completion. Obviously, once a vessel is built, then the sister ships that follow are far quicker. Smaller vessels, obviously, a shorter period of time, but you're still probably looking at a ship of around 50,000 gross tons. You probably still need, professionally, 4 years to do it properly.
Okay, and then backing that up to the beginning of when they were building ships to cross the Atlantic, 1840s, the beginning of the big companies as we know today, what would you estimate roughly it took to build a ship? Again, from the idea to the actual maiden voyage, and a rough idea.
I'm stumped.
I wasn't around in the...
No, and
Andy?
I imagine in those days that they very much built ships to formulas. They would have had how they built the hull. If we're talking about mass-driven to the early steamships, they would have very much built them to formulas. But I'm sorry, I really don't have a.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I bet you proportionally, in relation to the size of the vessel, there was still a link, as in the time required, because obviously these vessels were much smaller, so there would have still been development of some sort.
Hundreds of draftsmen with...
Yes.
Trial and
Great
error.
rolls of tracing paper. And
Good.
Well done, Elizabeth.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to do this, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
You survived.
well done.
Good. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Please
Thank you.
enjoy the show.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Not this show, the